Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and today we're looking at a car that I never thought that I would get my hands on in the UK. It's a Pontiac Star Chief from 1954. Now I believe there's only a couple of these in the UK, and I am awfully excited to take it out. It's the biggest car we've ever had on the channel, and to put it into perspective for you, that Plymouth Fury that we took out a few years ago was 4 inches shorter than this. So this is one big old bird, and I am jolly excited to get her out on the road. But before we get into any of that and we start up that straight 8 and have a good old listen, we're going to have a look around the outside, under the bonnet at that engine and everything else that's in there. We're going to have a look in the boot, a look around the inside and a walk through the dash so you can see everything that is on offer. Now this is quite an interesting car because of course it was marketed towards women. If you look at the sales brochures, if you look at the infomercials of the time, women are splashed all over everywhere, and I am very excited. So come on, buckle up, we're off to try the Star Chief. Grab a brochure from when this car was new, and emblazoned across the front you'll see the strapline, dollar for dollar. You can't beat a Pontiac, and only the price tag reveals its true cost. And really, it's hard to believe, looking at this car today, that it wasn't the best that money could buy. Because let's face it, the glamour, the frivolity, the beautiful detailing suggests a car which is far more expensive than it actually was. I mean, comparison-wise, look at what you could have got in Britain from this era in that mid-market space. It's just really no comparison whatsoever. Now, for my British viewers who may not be fully au fait with the GM divisions of the time, it was sitting, and by it I mean Pontiac, was sitting in the middle of the hierarchy, with Chevrolet sitting beneath it and Oldsmobile, Buick and Cadillac sitting above. Within the 54 range offerings from Pontiac, you had the Chieftain, and the Star Chief was the top trim package, making it the first prestige car to be offered by Pontiac. It marks an interesting point for Pontiac too, because prior to the launch of the Star Chief, all of the Pontiacs had shared their wheelbase with the Chevrolets, and this new model heralded a new era for Pontiac, with the larger 123.5 inch, 313cm wheelbase being used. Now you might sometimes see it referred to as the 124 inch wheelbase. They just kind of round it up. And it's also got the Truex frame, which makes up the basis of it, and it's said to be used in some of America's most expensive vehicles. Again, they're really driving that value from the inside out. Now, none of this is new if you're wondering, because these 124 inch wheelbases already used in the junior Oldsmobiles and the Buicks, and the car was still on the A platform, but it has a boost of 11 inches to the rear of the frame. The body is by Fisher, and that's a name that you'll really recognise if you know much about American vehicles. But if you're British and you're thinking, oh, is that linked to Fisher Ludlow? And for my Americans watching, Fisher Ludlow made British bodies and they were bought out by BMC in the early 50s. Don't be fooled, because they aren't linked. So Fisher, the people that make the bodies on these, are a Detroit-based company, and they are not linked to the Midlands-based business. The engines in these were straight 8s, again nothing groundbreaking, and in the brochure I obtained they didn't mention any other engine option, but I believe later on the Pontiac 6 is offered as an option because it appears in later brochures from late 1954 onwards, and there are several brochures which come out for these in, I believe, like late 53 through to late 54, and so what happens is they start updating and tweaking, and so not all of them appear to give the same options. So I issue that with a caveat. So there might have been one point in 54 where you could have got the Pontiac 6, but my knowledge is based on the first brochure that I picked up. Now the straight 8 has a high compression ratio of 7.7 to 1 and gives an impressive 127 horsepower. And for the Star Chief, it was fitted with the new carb and inlet manifold, which adds further improvement, and the aluminium dipped valves were said to double the valve life. Now for comparison, if you did go for the 6, whenever that was available, you get 118 horsepower, so it's still a really great option. The car was touted as having 2 driving ranges. Talk about those later on. Essentially, it's like you're low in your drive. And Pontiac bill it in the sales brochure as the world's best proven automatic transmission. Essentially, everything about this car is saying to you, it's a great value, it's a safe bet, you should go for it. The dual range hydromatic power was said to make accelerating in the 1 3/4 tonne vehicle so breezy that you could reach legal speed in a matter of seconds. But look, advertising laws are so lax in the 50s, this could mean absolutely anything. But let's be honest, it does sound amazing. The power steering on this is dreamy, and I'll show you later on as we cruise. It's said to relieve up to 80% of the steering effort, although I would say it feels far more than that. It is so light. It combines a ball nut steering gear mechanism with hydraulic booster. The idea behind the setup was that it gave you stamina to drive further in a more safely manner and to arrive feeling refreshed. So that's really everything they push in that early brochure. But what is it actually like once you get behind the wheel? Well, let's go and have a look. I'll tell you what, there's some room inside here. This is so comfortable, and it's just, it takes your breath away, because when you come into something like this, it becomes more than just an automobile. It's like art. It is gorgeous. Now this dash, as you can see here, is relatively simple, so it looks like there's quite a lot at first glance, but when you start digging deep, there's not actually that much to be worrying about. So over here on the far left, you've got your lights just on a pull, so like many of the classics that you're probably used to. Then you've got your wipers. Now they're on a vacuum, so just worth mentioning. Coming down from here, you've got your vents. So you pull those out, just get some fresh air into the cabin, and you're going to be pleased for that, because the next thing I tell you is you've got your heater controls up here. But you know what you haven't got? You haven't got aircon, because it was an option on this, and I think it was the first year of that option, and no one's picked it, even though the car was originally registered in Maryland, which I don't think is a particularly cold place. Now coming down from there, you've got your radio. Now as you can see here, it's all beautifully laid out, and it's got that Chieftain on it. Now if you're wondering why that is, that's because of course this is essentially like the Chieftain but longer, so it shares a lot of the same bits and pieces, because this is just kind of that top of the tree as I was talking to you about when we were walking around. Coming down from there, you've got your cigar lighter, and then you have also got, let me just show you, just going to pop that back in. There we go. You've also got your ashtray, which sits in the middle just here. Now, one of the sales bits in the brochure, the bit of patter that they use, is that the ashtray is central for everyone in the front. And I don't know if you clocked it when we were looking in the back, but you've also got one in the same position on the back seat as well. So that's pretty cool. Coming over from here, you've got your clock in the middle, and sad times, this doesn't work, because this is 6-volt electrics in this, and somebody fried it ages and ages ago. And so unfortunately, it no longer works, but I have given the owner, Ben, a bit of a tip off for somebody up north that can fix stuff like that, because he said he was really devastated essentially because it's original to the car. And I said, look, easy fix. Anyway, as you can probably guess, behind that as well, you've got your speaker for the radio. Now coming all the way over here, and I feel like it's almost in a different postcode, it's enormous, you have got your glove box, and you've got plenty of room in there. And then you've just got your Pontiac 8 above there, with the 8 a nod to that engine under the bonnet that we've already had a look at. Now coming in front of us, the driving situation is simple as anything. But first of all, I just want to share the horn with you, because it is the original horn. Sounds like one of those cartoon horns that you'd sample for something. Coming in front of us, you've got the transmissions. As you can see there, you've got neutral, you've got drive, you've got low, and you've got reverse. I was talking to you a bit about that when we were walking around. So what we're going to do today is we're going to stick in either drive or low. Low, remember, is for like when we're going up hills or we're towing, but she does prefer to start in that apparently, because low you start in first gear, and then the drive you start in second. Now coming over to the left there, you've got your indicators, and that is pretty much everything we've got. It's deliciously simple. There is also a modern radio CD player down here, but I'm not going to mention that because it's not part of the original car. And you've got your handbrake, just an umbrella style one down on the far left. Now remember, I was talking to you about it really being marketed to women at the start of the video. So if you look at any of the brochure pictures, it just features women. But here's the thing, they didn't just think, oh, this will be a really great car for a woman. They also thought about women actually driving it. So you've got some really good bits and pieces. Now, I don't know if you saw, and remember to sit in a proper position, not slouching, but you've got essentially a parking aid down on that side of the bonnet so you can see, and the seat adjusts so many ways that it adjusts 360 different variables, and they reckon whether you're 5'2" or 6'4", you can get these seats to adjust to just how you like them. Now, there's not too much of a difference between Ben and I in height, and so therefore the seat is exactly where I'd like it to be, so I'm not going to mess around with it today. I'm very happy, but you can also adjust these backs and everything. I think it comes forward 7.5 inches and back 7.5 inches, and then you can bring it forward and you can change everything. It's a really customizable car in terms of making it how you want it to be, which you may not have guessed when you first saw the bench seat. Now we're going to start it up. To get it to start, we turn the key and then we just press this little button down here. So have a listen to this because it is absolutely delicious. It's a bit of Americana without being too over the top. I think you're going to see what I mean when we start it. Now have a quick listen from the outside. So I just realised that I definitely had forgotten to talk to you about the panel in front of me. So as you can see, it goes up to 100 miles per hour. I did ask Ben what the top speed on this was because I saw a few different figures online, and apparently it's around 91 miles per hour. Now that mileage there, I don't know if you can see it at home, 34k or just over, that's the original mileage because they've got all the paperwork for this. And coming down from there, you've got battery, fuel, oil and water. So really you do have everything you need in here. But what is it like to drive? Well, my friends at home, we are going to take it out now and we are going to go on an adventure. I love that I'm starting this taking around a roundabout. Now this is essentially my very first drive of this, so if I seem slightly nervous, that's because I've had zero practice. I've just jumped straight in and seen what would happen. Because remember, this was a car that was marketed towards women and was meant to be extremely easy to drive. So I thought, right, okay then, let's see if that's true or not. And actually, it's very true. Now the first thing that grabs you when you drive this is that, well, first of all, it's slightly too big for these British roads. You do feel like you're trying to squeeze an orange in a sock. It is a bit ridiculous. But second of all, it's just how easy this steering is. Now what I mean by easy is I mean light, responsive. I am having to slightly correct myself, as you're probably noticing, on this gigantic steering wheel. But in terms of getting it to move, taking it around the roundabout and all the rest of it, because you've got that power steering, it makes everything so delightfully easy. Now it was said in the brochure that it removes 80% of the effort that is needed to drive the vehicle, but honestly it is so unnervingly light that I would almost say that it probably takes out 100%. Like I am barely needing to move as I drive along. It's just sensational in a way that I wasn't really expecting. Now you might also be watching me brake and thinking, oh, how's she getting on with those? Because of course on this it is those power assisted brakes. And Ben said to me, he said, Steph, when you jump in that car, watch out. He said, because the first time I did it, I was nearly through the windscreen. And I thought, oh God, what am I getting myself into? But actually, look, as long as you're gentle on them, they're not that bad. They're very easy to get into, but that's because I read the brochure. Now in the brochure it says that you do not need to apply any more pressure to the brakes than you do the accelerator. So I thought, right, okay then, let's apply that logic. And actually the logic is correct. You barely touch the accelerator and you barely touch the brake. And the idea behind that was that when you were out in your American vehicle and you were living the American dream in it, and you were traveling hundreds of miles on adventures or road trips or to see family and friends, you weren't ending up fatigued. That was the whole thing about it. It was meant to be comfortable, easy, and a pleasure to drive. And I would say, apart from the fact that I'm having to do a lot of correction when I'm driving on this steering wheel, it lives up to that dream. And bear in mind, this is a vehicle which is over half a century from when it was launched. So there's probably a little bit more play in this than there perhaps was, you know, at the start. And I will accept that, and I will celebrate the fact that it's here no matter what. I just think it's delightful. I love the colour on it. I love the finish. And bear in mind, this wasn't top of the GM family. You know, you've got Cadillac and all that, but I think Buick's above this as well. I'm a little bit shaky on some of my American stuff. And for me, this is just absolutely delightful. You don't need to spend mega bucks. And somebody was saying to me, oh, what, the poor man's Cadillac? I hate when people say stuff like that, because I think, well, what are we doing? Are we just writing the whole car off? It feels like a disservice to call it the poor man's anything, because you know what? I feel $1 million driving this. Although I wouldn't have $1 million left in my bank account, because this is only doing 12 miles to every British gallon, which means that she's quite a thirsty old bird. But I was kind of expecting that. You don't get in something as glamorous and extravagant as this and expect it to be doing 40 miles per gallon, do you? Because the joy in this is not the money you save driving, it's the driving experience. And even on these cluttered British roads where there are far too many boring cars in front of me, I am still having such a hoot. It is delightful. And you know, I mean, a lot of people would say, oh, you know, I want a meter engine, I want this, I want that, but it all works in harmony, and it's such a beautiful piece of machinery because it goes beyond, I'm sure, as you'll agree, just being a car. It's so much more. It's beautiful. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I guess we need to look for some critiques. One of the things I've actually forgotten to tell you is, did you notice it when we look round? You've got a little parking aerial down the front there to help you park as well. And actually, I guess one of my criticisms is I wish that was an inch higher, because I'm right at the bottom, only being 5'3", of where they're marketing this magical height bracket, and I'm struggling a wee bit to see that. I'm having to be like a meerkat over. So I guess I would like that to be a couple of inches higher. But other than that, what would I change? Well, really, not anything at all. It's really a delightful vehicle to get your teeth stuck into. It's attractive, it's pleasing, the dash is very ostentatious, but everything you've got is incredibly simple, so you're not having to really deal with 1,000,001 controls. It's cruising along beautifully. It's taken all those speed bumps and all the potholes with such ease and glamour that I've not even felt the slightest twinge coming up through the seats, and therefore I really cannot complain. Now, I'm really hoping this red changes to green pretty soon, because I want to take her for one last blast and hand the keys back to Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing this vehicle with you today. As I say, it's not something I ever thought that we would have on the channel. It's been a privilege to have on, and until next time, take care and drive safely.